Going back more than 35 years in decentralized wastewater management, Lombardo Associates, based in Newton, Massachusetts, created water quality models used by the EPA for maximum nitrogen load determinations, as well as authoring numerous United States Environmental Protection Agency manuals on the subject. Pio Lombardo is the engineer of record for more than $200 million of wastewater projects throughout the United States, having personally engineered more than 200 individual systems, more than 30 cluster systems, and numerous effluent treatment plants, including the 900,000 gallons per day facility in Anne Arundel, Maryland in the early 90s. Pio Lombardo has received the prestigious American Consulting Engineers Council Engineering Excellence Award, the Engineering News Record Construction Man of the Year Award, and was designated an Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year finalist. He also co-authored Alternative Sewer Systems as part of the Water Environment Federation. Locally, Lombardo Associates has Cape Cod projects currently operating in both Eastham and Mashpee. Please join me in welcoming Pio. Pio?
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Good morning, everyone. Nice to see you all. I'd like to start off with a couple of general comments, and then I'll delve into my presentation. First of all, I'm going to just focus on the septic tank effluent collection system. And in that regard, especially for the STEP system, we owe a lot of thanks to Harold Smith, who really did the groundbreaking work in Port Charlotte 50 years ago with General Development Corporation. They really were the pioneers, if you will. We're all emulating them. In my professional opinion, as you know, I've been around these issues for a while. Ian delved into the issues of Cape Cod and Orleans in particular. I want to congratulate this association, and I believe that the town is on the right track on where you're headed. So hats off to you. It's nice to see that some meritocracy appears to be proceeding. I want to congratulate Gary Clinton because because of his persistence and his accounting abilities, he's put his finger on the pulse of the issue. And obviously we're talking about money and what's the best way to solve the problem. We all want to solve the problem. It's got to be affordable, and we've got to be smart about what we do. And the collection system is the pulse of the issue. It's the non-sexy part of wastewater management, but it's really where all the money is. Not all of it, but a large part of it. So picking the right one, i.e. the most value-added, if you will, approach, is really the major pulse of the issue behind everything. So again, in Gary's, deduce that from many rereads of our Mashpee report, where he went through all of the spreadsheets painlessly and was able to see, oh, you know, that's really that's where the action is. And I said, you're right. Okay, so we'll demystify the whole thing. It's really about how do you can get into the sewer versus no sewer discussion at another time. The real question is, which is the best one to you? So again, I think you're on the right track. So I'm going to lead into some points here that I've assembled. I'm sure I haven't put together a perfect presentation, but I'm here to fill in any blanks as we go along. So why don't we go right through it, if you could help Mark with that. First, just to give you a little snapshot to supplement, you know, where we're coming from and our depth of experience is that we've been in this end of the business with Orenco back since late 1970s and early. I know the founders, there were a bunch of us in this industry, and hats off to how well they've been successful. Septic tank effluent systems are widely used everywhere. Orenco is the leader in the industry in terms of providing equipment and being involved in a good number of systems. However, especially in the Northeast, and especially in New York, New York's got probably the most, I believe, of any location in the Northeast, and I'll show you why. There's many in there that you can go look at, okay? We engineered a number of them ourselves in the early 1980s. So we've worked in the Northeast, and these are all engineered systems that I'll get into. The total number, though, over 50 miles of pipe, over 50 pump stations, et cetera, et cetera. We've also done, just for reference, we've engineered conventional sewer systems, and we've engineered north of Boston, and grinder pumps right here on Cape Cod. I've co-authored, next slide, the EPA, the Water Environment Federation Manual on Alternative Sewers. I co-authored the Septic Tank Effluent Collection System section with Jim Kreisel, who I'm sure many of you know, and co-authored. These are the manuals. So why don't we move along there. The importance of the collection system, as you heard stated earlier, but very succinctly, the studies have shown, round numbers, plus or minus, 70% of the entire package is associated with the collection system, okay? 50% cost savings is not unreasonable to achieve. So, ergo, 35% reduction should be in your minds out of the starting gate to go with a alternative or septic tank effluent collection system. Now, there's a variety of options available, but from what I know, and I think I've studied the situation quite a bit, again, the town's on the right track, and Orleans is a strong candidate for a septic tank effluent collection system, okay? Now, I'm going to go through a number of fundamentals so that you'll get your associate degree in septic tank effluent collection system designing that I know you all need for your professional certifications or cocktail parties. Is that the design criteria have been published by the states in national and international World Bank organizations for over 40 years. Okay, so there's no ifs and buts. This is how you do it. We've known how to do it for over 40 years. We're moving water around. It's not that, this is not computers. They've been used for decades widely for at least 40 years now. Okay? There's two types of septic tank effluent systems, and you want to keep these in mind. You've got the gravity systems, which are called the septic tank effluent gravity. Excuse me, I should stop using my hands like an Italian and use the pointer. You'd think I was Italian. Okay. So the septic tank effluent gravity, it's a gravity sewer. Water flows downhill. Okay? It's very simple. The questions here relative to how do you do that. For the STEC systems, you put the pipe, connect to the effluent side of your existing septic tank, goes to the street. That's it. Real simple. The plumber does it. Okay? 4-inch pipe, slows downhill, gets to the street. In my professional opinion, if I had to give a number, I would say probably 85% of the connections in Orleans would be by gravity. Don't worry about the pumps. Are really a small number. Okay, you've got a lot of slope to work with. We're not on a flat territory. We're not in Florida, but frankly, and you don't have a lot of undulating hills that would require some pumping. So in my opinion, you're going to be heavy gravity, which is wonderful. Okay, it's inexpensive. You don't have to worry about power outages, et cetera, et cetera. Because that, and I'll go through how it gets laid out. There's two types of gravity systems. One's constant grade, keeps going down. Another one's variable grade, which allows you to save money. And I'll just show you. And it's for technical. That's for the you get bonus points if you pass that quiz. The second type is a septic tank effluent pressure system that you've heard described. You have a pump into the tank or right after the tank pump chamber because you've got to pump it uphill. Or you're in an area where everybody else is pressurized, so you have to be pressurized. The challenge in this business is what's the right mix of septic tank effluent and gravity. So step 7, what's the balance? Again, in my opinion, from what I know, you should be 85% gravity. Okay? And that just takes, obviously, being ingenious and smart. And I can tell you, from projects even when we started with one layout in an area of 4 pump stations. And then when we really squeezed on it, they all disappeared just by rerouting, et cetera, et cetera. So, and you all can probably figure out which way the water would go, downhill. The key thing I wanted to show is design criteria were published in 1982 by the New York Department of Environmental Conservation as rules, design criteria under which you were to design it as the engineer of record, and was the basis for funding from the federal and state government. Okay, 1982. Published, adopted by a state agency that was administering hundreds of millions of dollars in a state bureaucratic agency. So that should dispel any discussion, I would hope, relative to the efficacy of these systems. Okay, 1982. I hate thinking that's 30 years ago. Okay, so, and many states have their own ifs, ands, and buts on how to, potato, variations. So Florida was one of the early ones, but you can Google online and get half a dozen states that have that. This is what variable grade means, is that you still can go, is the water line can be submerged. Constant grade says you never can have a flat spot in the collection system. Variable grade says, yeah, you can do that, as long as you know what hydraulic grade line is versus the topography. Okay, and this is one of our projects where we engineer around that, so you don't have to have pumps where you don't need them. Okay, and another way to look at it, you can design things that act as siphons. Okay, and in one of our systems 30 years ago, we designed and engineered a 2-mile siphon. That was the longest one that's ever been done. You've seen this cartoon that just shows how they can be mixed, even in short distances. Okay? Now, in terms of the design, these are the bullet items, and these are the test quiz items on really, how do you design this thing? First of all, you're going to retain, upgrade, and replace the septic tank, as you've heard. In my professional opinion, well over 50% of the septic tanks in Orleans should be able to be retained. My understanding of the statistics are that over 50% of the properties were built within the last 15 to 20 years. Title V improvements came in '95. Everything after that, one can assume is reusable. So it's easy 15%. Okay? So for those folks that have those that would be on the gravity line, it's getting your 4-inch line to the street. That's all it is. You've heard this. The benefit is you're only transporting liquid around. A lot easier than liquid and solids. Okay? We're looking at a 4-inch gravity pipe. That's just a standard in the industry. Rolled could go small. There's no point to it in gravity. And then we use 2 inches in the street and 1.5 inch on the property. Very importantly, when you get into the design, is that there's a lower slope requirement. It's at least 50% less than the slope requirement of a conventional sewer. So a conventional sewer goes deeper faster, basically twice as fast. And then if you had a variable grade, you don't go down deep as fast at all. And because of those conditions, that's why pump stations exist, and in Chatham, there's 80 of them because of all of that. So just Could one have avoided that? You know, one has to go look at it, but that's what you're playing with, is the slope of that line, okay? And it's a lot flatter because it's just liquid, okay? It's not that exotic. Excuse me. Cleanouts are used versus expensive manholes, okay? Cleanouts that you see on your house, on the waistlines, versus the manhole, which it's big, it's just more money. Also, the line is commonly installed in the shoulder of the road. That's how you avoid the road restoration, as well as ease the construction. Not as disruptive to the traffic and community because of that. With the directional drilling, you snake around things, etc. That all results in the lower capital cost, less construction disruption, less in O&M requirements, and less in annual costs. And you've heard Mike talk about some of those details. Now, how do you prove that? Okay, because it's always just talk, and see where's all the sales crap. You know, wait a minute. And you know, who's lying to who, and you know, right? It's in politics. So, you know, if a lie is repeated multiple times, it's perceived as the truth, right? So, but where the tire hits the pavement is in the bids, okay? And it's very easy to substantiate what we've been talking about in terms of the prospective cost savings, is looking at the bid tab. We routinely do this. This is the crib sheet on whether you're right or wrong in the real world, okay? So, and when you look at the bid tabs, you'll see that, and I apologize for, you can't read it, but you know, this was done in recent projects by, you know, engineers that work on the Cape that you all know, and this is Robert Hour's bid tab on a conventional sewer system. When you look at it, you'll say, wait a minute, we don't need 8 and 12-inch pipes, and that's at $70 a foot, and we can put in the 2-inch or the 4-inch pipe, and that's at $20 a foot, or da-da-da, and 2 times that. That's up. So there's no magic to it. It's done all the time. Actually done. So, don't take my word for it. It's all in black and white. And this is all reproducible and certifiable by accountants and people who are in this industry. There's no smoke and mirrors. Okay? So that's the training. That's the short course. And again, as far as, in my opinion, you really want to be thinking about a stake system. That's really what you've got, the gravity system, for a large part. There will be a need for periodic pump stations. I'm going to show you what they look like. They're pretty small and inexpensive. If I was able to zoom in and show you the cost of a pump station for total wastewater, it's huge. And I'll show you why. So let's go through. This is the Mayo, Maryland one we did a number of years ago. I use it because I believe it's the largest retrofit of using septic tank effluent system. Okay, it was done in, we really started it back in the mid-'80s, and it was really at the front edge of the industry in terms of applying these systems. It was the largest at this time. I don't think there's a large one that's been done. Again, retrofitting, which is really what you have to deal with. Okay, this is the layout. This is the final product. Okay, and this is going to be comparable. This is what your system would look like if you sewered everybody that's currently proposed, or just sewered the ones that are proposed. In this case, there's 11 neighborhoods that existed, and these are just the pump station from the neighborhoods. So many of these are all discharging into by gravity. This is what we call the Cars Ridge pump station. Well, frankly, there's 4 mini pump stations because it's on the top of a hill and things were draining down. This is Chesapeake Bay, by the way. If we go forward, and then I'll come back. This is Mayo, Maryland. It's right next to it's on Chesapeake Bay, excuse me, just south of Annapolis. Okay, so similar waterfront conditions. Orleans, frankly, is a lot easier. Most of this the tanks are going to be underwater, so we were very concerned about water tightness. because I was going to have the Atlantic Ocean to deal with. So I'm just kidding, go back. I just want to quickly go. So this is what you're going to look like. There's gravity service areas that go to what we call small pump stations that then would go into a force main that perhaps would go to a large pump station that then goes into an interceptor that then goes to, in this case, there was a need for a main pump station that goes to the treatment plant. And in this case, we engineered constructed wetlands and then even discharged into a coastal area right next to shellfishing and active bathing. And we received all the permits and even endorsed by the oystermen and the state agencies. So that's the spine, if you will, in the network. And what one does is engineer who's on gravity and connecting these things. So, as was said earlier by Mike, these are all sub-areas and could even have, in this case, we couldn't have, this is, the soils are terrible here, it's clay. So we couldn't have small treatment areas, but this is where, because of Cape Cod situations, you can have cluster systems in each one of these sub-areas if you so chose. Okay? So again, that's just the Google shot, so what it looks like. Now, quickly, just on a house, you got a septic tank, and it's either by gravity, so there's a straight pipe, or there's a pump that's added into the existing tank, or you add even just a 500-gallon tank after that, put the pump in, and it goes out to the street. And you've seen some of those things before. Now, here's some of the key features of the project that I think you want to think about. In terms of, how do you take this stuff and how does it apply to Orleans, and then even take it to the next step? What are what's what we call these delivery mechanisms that you could really think about to get more savings? Okay. First of all, just to brag, during that time we had to deal with the water tightness. So we, through a variety of, frankly, experimentation, we developed this vacuum test, which is now a standard in the industry. We tried a pressure test, and that didn't work. The important thing here was that we broke the project into the components and bid each one separately. Because at that time, frankly, the local contractors thought they didn't know what they were doing. Okay, so there was a significant fear factor. Okay, now that's pretty well gone, but back then it was tough because the contractors didn't know, or they were just scared. So we had to do retail programs to the contractors. But the septic tanks, the pumps, and the controls were bid out separately. We bought 1,000 pumps and 1,000 control panels and 2,000 septic tanks. Okay, and then we're able to get a good price, and then maintain quality control, and then there is an importance to have uniformity of equipment. So there's trade-offs, but so we were able to achieve that. Also, the street sewer installation contract was sized to maximize competition, which also, as Mike was saying, we tailored them so the local contractors could bid them. And the rule of thumb is around $2 million per contract. You don't want to go too much over that down in that area. You've got a little bit of different here. You don't have as many contractors, but you've got some good local ones. The house connection work was bid separately. Electrical, so you could have electricians, the electrical connection work done. So some outfit. And as you can imagine, if somebody were to get the contract for 1,000 septic tanks over 5 years, that's a nice way to give you a good price and for them to have a stable business. So that's really what you manage. So it's a win-win type of situation. Now, there's a variety of technology options. I'm going to go quickly through this. And you look at, you got the concrete type that everybody knows, but in the fiberglass ones, and then the polyethylene. We were agnostic over which ones get used. They all work. So we just put in a specification for each one and then let the marketplace tell us which one was the best. The nice thing today, and Orenco's been a leader in this, is the internet connection. So now you can get control panels that'll talk to the internet, so you as the manager of the facility will know where the trouble is before you get the call. Because when you get the call, you want to know. Or ideally, you've already reacted positively to it. At that time, AK Industries out of Indiana won the contract. Okay, and they make fiberglass and polyethylene, and this is what was delivered and installed. We were very concerned about flotation and what happens when, because many of these areas were going to be underwater during the 100-year event. So those are all, and that's the benefit, is they were all vacuum tested before we accepted them from the contract, from the supplier. And then prior to them being, after they were installed, they were again vacuum tested to make sure that a leak didn't develop during the installation process. And again, being underwater, that's a serious issue, or under sea level. And the nice thing about plastic ones is that they're light and get moved around. Okay, you've got concrete ones, and it's a price game. There's trade-offs. And naturally, energy cost makes a big difference in terms of how, and again, we're agnostic about it. This is one of the tanks that are used. It's quite nice. It's a real robust one. It's a little more expensive, but it's really strong construction. Now, here's what the front yards look like in Mayo. So you all will be in some way, what's my place going to look like when we're done. We've got a utility there that's a little fastidious. And Mayo has, in many areas, have stormwater problems and wastewater problems. And they have wet soils. Well, it's a drainage problem. Well, so in many situations, don't address both, and when you don't, it gets to be a nightmare. However, so these are the caps, clean-out caps. They wanted them exposed because, frankly, people were opening them up and using them to drain the yard. And you can imagine. So, but that's it. You got a manhole cover in the yard, as you have now for your septic tank. By and large, that's all you're going to need. You probably just need just be one or two. You'd have one if it was a regular tank, and two if you had a pump chamber. So that would be it. This is what we call our small pump station. So there would be a variety of properties going to it. That's the electric control panel. And this is, you can see the car. That's it. This is a cover just to there's a large septic tank there for emergency. We don't have an emergency generator, so there's 24 hours of storage tank right there. That's it. So that's a small, we used to call them peanut pump stations. This is what we call a large one. This is the emergency generator, control panel. This is a valve chamber, or the access hatch, if you will, to the valve chamber. Pretty small facilities. So. So that's what a septic tank effluent collection system looks like, the cost. And then I know many of you know we've worked in Mashpee for a number of years looking at the alternatives there. And in the Mashpee, and again, this is what Gary put his finger on, is that the septic tank effluent collection system component alone reduced the cost 40%. When we were looking at the Nitrix technology, technically, on an economic basis, it was a wash, relatively speaking. The big savings is on the collection system. So that's the basis for saying that it's been done well. So with that, I'll stop and I'll be happy to respond to any questions.
Thank you very much, Neil. Okay, question, please. Yes, sir, back of the room, Ed.
Thank you. I'd like to address my questions to all three members of the panel. A couple of weeks ago, I had the opportunity to sit in on a presentation made by Brian Baumgartner from the county health department. And he talked about the number of IH systems installed on Cape Cod. He mentioned that there are 1,522 systems, 40 of which are in Orleans, and that of the 1,522 systems, 761 of them are being monitored by the county in terms of their effectiveness. Brian talked about a system that they use called a whisker graph. He presented the whisker graph, which basically shows the deviation from the mean, high and low, of effectiveness in removing nitrogen.
Right.
He said of the 761 systems that they're monitoring, 569 of them, or roughly 75%, are performing what he would consider to be at the acceptable level. And he went through, and I won't repeat it here, but he gave us statistics on all the various kinds of systems, the Advantex, BioGear, FAST systems, and so forth. At the end of the presentation, there were a number of questions and a number of concerns raised, and I'd like the panel to address some of these. Number one concern was that all of the statistical information that the county is collecting is coming from the installers, and there was concern that that the numbers are rigged. Number two was that the number of different kinds of systems and the variety of systems out there makes it an uncontrollable, a lot of uncontrollable variables vis-a-vis having a centralized sewer system.
Go ahead.
There was also concern about the cost of monitoring. Some of those concerns I think have been addressed here today with some of the new technology.
Yeah, if I may, because I know we're going to be pressed on time. I'm interested in your question. However, I do share this concern to the moderator, is that, and I'd be happy to stay all day, is that I want to make sure that we deal with the collection system issues, main focus of this. I would suggest that if we can let's get rid of and deal with the collection system issues, we can chat about treatment technologies and issues there. I just get concerned and we get sidetracked.
Well, the reason I'm raising this is obviously this presentation was made at the Orleans Board of Health. Obviously, the Board of Health is going to have a role in what system we end up putting in place. So I think it's important. I don't see any members of the Board of Health here today, unfortunately. Yeah. But I think it's important that we address these kinds of issues and that the residents have some understanding as to how and if we can counter some of these concerns.
Well, let me, if I could be brief and be happy to pass the baton along. First of all, the gentleman's correct that they're only reporting, they're a reporting agency. They're nothing more, they are an agency that's taking information that they're providing, consolidating it, and there's no question that they do not have independent data, okay? That's number one. I've seen the Worcester charts, it's interesting, but from a practitioner's perspective, it doesn't tell you who the good, bad, or ugly ones are. It just says the mix of them is this, okay? And and that's easier than slice and dice. There are third-party, there's numerous documents out there. EPA published a document on all of these issues May of last year for Chesapeake Bay and Obama's directive. What's the best thing to do for Chesapeake Bay for nitrogen? So I would urge that being used as a focus for it. because you're going to get into quicksand and black holes on all of this stuff. You know, so and that's where I would rather avoid that discussion for the time being, because I think you've got a winner here. Okay, and that I'd like to see people leave a good feeling in the sense that you're on the right track. There's alternative sewers have a history. They're not really, they've been around for a long time. Using alternatives conveys perhaps a bad notion in certain people's minds. And there's serious cost savings being achieved, can be achieved. You can still even use conventional treatment plants. So that's where I want to avoid that controversy, because it doesn't matter. Okay? You can still achieve these savings and have a membrane bioreactor, et cetera, et cetera. So I would urge you all to stay focused on it, grab this opportunity, run it to ground, do what you got to do. The town's going to be doing this in the coming year, as I understand it. So let that play out and try not, you know, there's a lot of noise out there.
Undoubtedly, Ed, to that question, there's a lot of questions that have to be answered yet and researched, and a lot of people questioning and a lot of people doubting. The purpose of this by the Taxpayers Association was to try and bring some ideas to the forefront. They're not new ideas that have worked in other parts of the country, but it does provide an alternative, because heretofore we really haven't been provided with an alternative. And to the point earlier, your point about Board of Health, I also, and I'm not closing yet because we'll still have some questions, but I would like to thank all of you for coming and spending your morning here to listen to this very important topic. As volatile as this topic has been in the past, I quite frankly thank you for coming, and I'm disappointed that there aren't more representatives from our town here and our various departments. I mean, this thing at the town meeting was so volatile, we had to have guards standing outside, and yet we have a room of, I think I counted 83 people. So it's important that you hear this. It's important, I believe, that this is, the videotape of this will be available for people to see that haven't been able to make it. And I think it's just important, and it should at least raise questions in everybody's mind to say, gee, if this is working in other areas and we can save money, and it is as effective, then we should be looking at it. And that's the purpose of that Article 4 vote, in essence. Okay, more questions now. Yes, the lady here.
I don't mind actually answering. Maybe I can add a little perspective to what you're talking there from a manufacturer's perspective on demo projects, and kind of link to what we're doing here today. I mean, you mentioned our product because we do on-site work as well. One of the problems in demo projects is there's so many variables, and you mentioned a couple of them. It's the operators. Every home has a different influent coming into it, and all these things lead to a different output. And we see that in demo projects all over the country. I mean, they're going on everywhere. There's a lot of them going on, and they don't necessarily turn out the same data. And just like you're saying here, they don't all show that they're working. And part of the driver, I mean, we do on-site systems, and the ones you reference are quite old. They're not nitrogen systems, but they still achieve 60% reduction in nitrogen in our systems, normally even the old ones. But the driver in that is the cost. If you're doing just on-site systems to achieve that level, what I showed you today is you can scale up, whether it be to a decentralized system or to a centralized plant. You can scale up and at least make it more manageable. So I don't have a different maintenance entity on every system, but you can actually start to think about providing maintenance entities to clustered systems or to central plant, and create a better economy of scale and get to where you need to be. So maybe driving from what you're talking about there to what we're talking about today, there is a link, and well, that helps a little bit.
Yeah, there is a link that's going on, and you may want to follow what's going on in Maryland. And they're really serious about it. First, they have a stipulated agreement that they have to do, and obviously it's Washington, so they got to lead by example, we hope. The normalizer, and Mike's right, you know, if you graph that data on cost versus performance, then all of a sudden it'll switch. Okay, you get what you pay for. The key thing is dollars per pound of nitrogen removed per day. And when that metric, which is the common denominator in optimization metric that one should be using, then frankly the advanced systems are just as good as the cheap ones. And so And there is serious, and now that's being required by state law in Maryland for all suppliers to provide that information. And in Calabar County, Maryland, they use that as their metric for selection of which technologies would be used. That's how you transform that. And if you don't meet the requirement, you get degraded. So, and that's how it would be. That's how it would be properly implemented. So that's the response to that whole mishmash.
Okay, the lady in the white.
If I just wanted to respond to two things. That previous question, as far as the information, the statistical information coming from the installers, that's not the case. It's actually coming, all of these innovative alternative systems have to be operated by a licensed wastewater operator. So that information is coming from licensed wastewater operators, not the installers. And then as far as whatever percent was meeting their permit requirements or satisfactory requirements, I think there's two things. One, I touched upon it. If you're looking at the broad cross-section of systems from 18 years ago versus the ones that are installed today, I think the older systems are not as good. There have been improvements over the last 18 years to the efficiency of the systems. So if you're looking at that broad cross-section, that is driving that number downward in terms of its ability to meet permit requirements. And then also, as Mike talked about, the RME, the responsible maintenance entity, it's like anything else. You've got good operators and bad operators, and if it's the good operators that are keeping the systems in compliance, and if the bad operators aren't doing the proper routine maintenance, the efficiency of the system is going to drop off. So that's what plays into that.
Okay, you have a mic.
Okay, thank you. I'm an outlander from Chatham, and I would say I wish I had brought a videotape of what our town has been going through. My particular road for 3 seasons, 1 fall and 2 springs. The road has been ripped up. Every day they would dig, they would then have to refill, then they would re-dig the next morning because of the sand issues and water issues and the clay issues. The road was disrupted for 3 seasons. And just to see the cost that you would save in the small line on the shoulder. We had 2 gas breaks, we had 2 water breaks, we had to have our whole water main relay the entire length of the residential road going past our house. And so costs just keep going up. And I wish I had a video to show you the difference in what's been happening in Chatham. And I think if you just go down 28 on Main Street through Chatham, you'll see that 2 years into the project, the road is abysmal. I don't know what that's going to do to tourists, let alone those of us who live in the community having to go totally around town to go to the mail or to Stoner's or whatever. It's been incredibly disruptive. So clearly in our town, the politics were terrible and continue to be terrible. So even though our tax association group tried to be very vocal, we couldn't get through some of the town politics. And I'd really encourage you all to be very, like a dog with a bone, don't let go of this one, because you have one time to get it right and save yourself an awful lot. And our biggest concern is the costs down the road. They're not telling us that. And I think the system will be obsolete before it's used. So, good luck.
We have that on tape, don't we? Before, we need a mic.
I've worked on these systems, septic systems, different systems over the past 40 years. And what I've noted is the vast improvements they always have. And I thank you, gentlemen, for your speeches. And Gary, thank you for bringing this up again. But I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you a question about the so-called important pump and the electricity and money saved in the future. Now, and to see if you're up with the latest technologies, do you have brushless DC variable speed motors in all your pumps and stations and controls? which will save millions in electricity costs over the years.
Right, well, on the scale that we're talking about in an on-site system, I don't see that the cost benefit of a variable speed drive makes sense.
Well, you quoted $25 per household.
Per year.
If it goes down to 10, that's millions of dollars.
For a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, the difficulty with that is that's good for a situation where, let's say, you're generating your own power, so photovoltaic, but you have AC power available. To get AC to DC...
Inverter.
Right, no, I understand.
Very simple. It's the latest. It's the latest in pumps, and they give rebates for it.
Please want to answer.
Sir, you're raising an excellent point. And what it'll boil down to is the cost worth the savings? And I like the idea. It's not a standard off-the-shelf item, and one has to be just concerned, but it's a great point. And variable speed pumps are used routinely in the treatment facilities and in the larger pump stations. So that is, going to DC power is not widely used. It's because there's not a lot of demand for it. It is used in isolated locations where you're getting DC power being generated. But your point's well taken. That's a good point.
Okay, next question, Tom. Mike first, please.
Is Mashpee up and running, or if not, are they committed to this technology?
Well, you know the status of wastewater management planning throughout the Cape. It's a lot of talk. And there's very few towns that have bitten the bullet about it. So Mashpee is going through the process, and it's still in the wastewater facility planning final definition. The final definition now that's being, let me say, vetted out is 8 cluster systems, and the management and ownership would be it's proposed, it hasn't been consummated yet, would be transferred to the water department, or the water district. And in my opinion, obviously, because they have an easy revenue generating technique. So that's really what's happening in Mashpee. The plan's virtually complete. It's 8 subsystems, and institutionally, it's to be transferred to the water department to, quote, once it gets adopted, to actually implement it.
Okay, gentleman here in the blue shirt.
Thank you. Would it be fair to say that, in essence, what we're talking about now is that after Article 4 is passed at town meeting, we're looking for an engineering review of, in simple terms, a small pipe system as opposed to the large pipe system that was presented to us as part of this whole wastewater treatment plant. So the first step is to have this engineering review done. The town is then going to have to make a decision as to whether they want to abandon the original big pipe plan that's been presented to us, even though it was just a draft. It's accepted as law around here now in many places. But we would then have to abandon that original plan, come up with a new small pipe type of system, which would still require a treatment plant at the end. Probably smaller, less expensive and whatnot, but still require a treatment plant at the end. Would there be any provisions, or do we need to then look at, in your opinions, if we do, as a town, go to this small pipe system as a better alternative to the original proposal, still add into that a component of individual alternative innovative systems in each of the homes that may be able to reduce our nitrogen loads even more and incorporate that in the end? Or do you think we should abandon any idea of that and just stick to the small pipe system, which, as I said, is still going to require some kind of big treatment plant at the end?
Well, I don't know if these gentlemen can answer that, but and anybody can correct me if I'm wrong, but Article 4 was worded very carefully by the town. And in fact, a couple people got up and said, no, I want to make sure we're just looking at the small pipe alternative and not others. So I think this is a comparison to the small pipe. One thing that I think I can correct you on, or at least add to, is it's my understanding under the small pipe scenario, as I believe P.O. said, that you can have a number of treatment facilities, small treatment facilities. So you might not be looking at the big mega plants sitting over Namesake Marsh and discharging fresh water into the marsh.
Yeah, and if I could briefly add, in wastewater management planning and engineering, think of it as a funnel. The collection system is the major piece. That's your next step. Once you get a decision made on that, you could then pursue where there's value to be gained, those other areas that we're talking about. So, but those would be steps 2 and 3 down the line, if this one pans out.
Bob Shafto.
I want to thank all the speakers. I personally learned a lot, had no perspective on this, and it's been very helpful. We've all seen the effect over the last 10, 15 years of technology with our computers and our networks. I think installing anything like a traditional sewer system would be going back to dial up to the internet. The question then is, which of the new technologies might be the best? So, can the town get some prospective bids from various sources to try to compare the technological options for the future?
Again, I'll attempt to answer that, and anybody can correct me if I'm wrong, but Article 4, Bob, in the town meeting was very specific. And I'm sure it was very specific for a reason, but it's going to compare the costs associated with the plan that is already on the table, the mega plant plan, if you will, with the small pipe plan. The town is in the process right now of, by the end of the month, having an RFP, request for proposal, to be sent out to various engineering firms to see who would get the job of costing this out. And we're all anxiously awaiting the actual wording of that document. So while I think it would be very personally, not speaking as a moderator, I'm speaking personally, very worthwhile to see if there are other potentials. This is very specific on small pipe, and as you, I hope, have learned today, there's some potentially huge benefits in small pipe, certainly over what Chatham has gone through.
If I could just weigh in on my sort of personal opinion on this, and it's not on the table in Orleans right now, but just the way that I see the advancement, and the computer analogy is a great one because I've had the same one. The way the industry is going and the development of the technologies, I think it's going to be in the not too distant future that individual on-site wastewater treatment technologies will be so good that you wouldn't need to have either a centralized or a decentralized approach. But I mean, the cost is coming down. The technology is rising. The cost is coming down. And it's going to be just like the personal computer that, you know, when I was in college, it was a computer the size of this room, you know, just to carry out the functions, what we're doing with really iPads now. So I think that is advancing, and I think that at some point in the future, it would be a viable option. But I don't think it's on the table in Orleans right now.
Something else that's kind of just in my perspective of watching projects like this across the country is it's very hard to bring innovation through our standard processes. You know, bid build, a lot of times it just doesn't bring that innovation forward, and there's a lot of reasons why it doesn't happen, but it's things like today where you educate yourself, hear about innovation, hear about alternatives, and at least try to keep those options on the table through review processes. It's really, really important. So say what you've done today is great, and I encourage you to keep on this road, because it's very easy to push the innovation aside and go right back to status quo. I see it all the time. And really, innovation is really needed in all these type of projects.
Gentleman in the back row had a question.
It's been very informative, this meeting, and it's, I think, well worth having it. The one thing that I've learned that I didn't know before is that it keeps being stressed by the gentleman up here that collection versus treatment is two different things. And I have a feeling that the people of Orleans the average citizen doesn't know that, and they just hear one system together, and they don't understand what it means on a collection. And if there's any way that those two phases could be broken out when discussions are held at town meetings and that type of thing, or educational things, that you can have any kind of treatment you want, but it's a collection system that is the difference. And so if there's any way that you can do that separately, and you can use the Chatham example as a different collection system, that would help the average citizen out there who's not attending this meeting to understand it.
Unfortunately, I'm actually going to encourage you to do the opposite. That's really traditional, that you break the collection and treatment into two separate processes. The problem you run into is you don't necessarily get the value of the system, and you don't figure out which collection systems work best with which treatment processes. So I'm actually going to recommend the opposite, is that I encourage any type of evaluation. Don't get caught up in just saying it's a comparison between gravity, vacuum, step, grinder, or a comparison between an MBR, because you know what you're going to end up with. You're going to end up with two dissimilar processes that may not have given you the best value as a system. So I'm actually going to encourage that. I think they need to run together, and I think they need to be presented together.
Well, let's have some spirited debate here. I'm going to agree with this gentleman's perspective from the important perspective of public education, understanding, and process. And there's not a necessity to abandon them. That my experience is that the public can only digest things in certain digestible pieces. And that I think your point is very well taken, knowing the history that Mike's not going to know about of Orleans and the Cape, is that to achieve the acceptance of the alternative collection system and for the public to understand, and I would hope and expect, get behind, that serious cost saving is a serious achievement. And that should that occur, which I hope it does in my lifetime, that the treatment issues that Mike is bringing up will happen, because that's the logical next question. And what's happened historically is that they get so embroiled together, and I think there's some purposeful confiscation that goes on, that people get glassy-eyed and we lose them. So we want to secure victories, get those momentums going. We're not abandoning those other options, but we're going to deal with them at the proper time so that we can at least get the first base before we try to get the second.
I'm going to continue the debate a little bit further. is what I see a lot of times is people get caught up in the technical side of it, and you get so emotional in the technical side of it that you kind of lose track of the bottom line. The first thing you've got to be is how much are you going to pay, am I going to pay each month? Get down to that bottom line and what that question is and get your most value. Because what you see over and over again is you get caught up in comparing technologies and you lose track of the bottom line. Before you know it, you've got a system that costs twice what it could have. And you see it over and over and over again.
Yeah,
so
we're not here though, like, I don't want to be combative. We're not here, in my opinion, on the Cape. So I don't think it's an either or. I think that they can be done sequentially.
Okay, I would like to just ask that we, thank you for the spirited debate. I would like to say, though, however, to your comment that you mentioned we could talk at town meeting. Town meeting is too late.
Yes.
Because we're going to be voting on a $5 million appropriation for engineering the mega system. And it is critical that this information be disseminated. So however the Orleans Taxpayers Association can disseminate this, again, I am extremely disappointed looking around this room that there are only a couple representatives from the town here. And that's very, very unfortunate. So we have to get this information out, and hopefully this this proposal for costing out both systems is transparent, and that we really see the cost differences. If the net result is that we can achieve the nitrogen reduction that is needed, If the net result is that we won't destroy Namesake Marsh, if the net result is that we can help downtown get what they really need, and one system is 30 or 40 or 50% cheaper, then it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out which one to go. Yes, my friend from Chatham.
But a question about the fact that you're taking off water at the clear zone. Doesn't that mean that you're having less treatment in whatever centralized system you have, therefore your costs are going to be less because you're using something at the residential site to pre-treat?
That's why I want you to talk about the system.
Right, that was my thought in response.
Okay, we have time for a couple final questions.
I just
the microphone first, please.
Yeah. I want to add this because it's not going to get easier in the regulatory body. It's only going to, with the lawsuits that are pending, you're going to end up having to do so much more in treatment. Now, I went to EPA, I gave this to Mr. Farquhar, some information, just some points. One of the points that I see happening is they recommend on-site treatment. The EPA does, because the amount of water that's used to treat, you have to treat, just to give an example, hormones in the water. They're going to start regulating other micro-pollutants, not just nitrogen, because of the EPA's lawsuit. Now, across the board, these little places are going to be able to maintain treatment in a little bit of water, rather than a huge amount, maybe 1 million gallons a day mixture of diluted pollution, which is a lot harder to clean. And the cost factor for this town and every other septic plant on the Cape and around the country are going to come up with all kinds of money to pay to clean it.
Okay, is there a question?
Well, the question would be, is the people of Orleans need to realize that we're going to have to treat our water much better than that plant is going to be able to do. And these on-site systems have the technology and the ability to do it better.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I'd just like to make a comment or two if I might. I'm Fran Meany, Chatham Taxpayers Association. How about this? Is working okay? Fran Meany, Chatham Taxpayers. You actually are very well positioned here in Orleans to make a difference with what you're trying to do. Unfortunately, our Taxpayer Association wasn't formed until after town meeting had voted $60 million to build a massive plant. We are still fighting because there's a lot of collection miles to be put out, and we hope to be able to get a change made. The problem you'll probably have, and the lady is correct in talking about local politics, you'll have the same problem here. The people here get wedded to what they started out with, and they don't want to change. However, there is some good news. It isn't only you who is looking at the alternatives. We presented almost exactly this in Chatham 2 years ago, but unfortunately it was 3 months after that town meeting vote. Falmouth has voted $2.7 million to study alternatives, just as you're talking about doing. And Pio Lombardo just said that Mashpee, which has Stearns and Wheeler as its consultant, the people there who are running the show say, no, pluses make more sense to us because we can save hundreds of millions of dollars, we think. So there is a movement going around, and also I've got to tell you about the appearance before the Chatham Board of Selectmen of the county executive director who came and pretty much confessed, if I may put it that way, to the selectmen that they had concluded that centralized systems on Cape Cod were, and I'm quoting, unaffordable. Unaffordable. And that we have to be looking for alternatives and innovative technologies. And indeed, the county has requested money from the state, it's in the Senate version of the fiscal 12 budget, to start that process. So you've got your money, you've got $2.7 million in Falmouth, and now the county has said that centralized systems, they have concluded are unaffordable. This is a dramatic change in the county. Why the Cape Cod Times and the other papers haven't really made this clear that this took place, because they covered that particular meeting, I have no idea. But you should take advantage of this. This is extremely important.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Meany. Just along those lines, several of us appeared before the Cape Cod Commission and also before the Board of Selectmen here and reiterated Mr. Niedzwiecki's words. He unfortunately went on to say, after he said that mega sewering is simply unaffordable for the Cape, went on to say, but Chatham, you keep going ahead, and Orleans, you keep going ahead. So apparently in Chatham and Orleans we can afford this. But that's what we're up against, and your point is extremely valid, and thank you for coming today.
Something to maybe add to that too that's kind of interesting is EPA's been making reports to Congress, I think back to 1996. I think they happen every 2 or 4 years, but repeatedly in every report to Congress, you can, and I've actually included using one of my slides, is that they keep coming back saying we cannot solve our wastewater needs in this country without a decentralized element, whether that's on-site clustering. They say we cannot meet it without that. And they've been saying it now for 25 years. And I don't know that we're really that much further ahead. We're making progress, but I don't think we're anywhere near what the EPA has envisioned or what they thought they needed to solve the problems. And then the other element too is kind of interesting, is you mentioned that it's hard to back up, and there's a little word that we coin in our office, and we call them sewer wars. And we actually at some point, as a company, we recognize that if it progresses to what we say is a sewer war, we stop. We can't be a very profitable company if we keep engaging in sewer wars, because we can sit here and debate all day. So however you figure out how to move forward, it's all about, charting a course and staying on it, and hopefully getting people unified. And it takes a lot of public involvement, because everything I ever see is, as soon as the community divides, I mean, we could be talking about this in 2030. I mean, there's programs out there that have been installed for 30 years.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you for coming. I would certainly like to thank our speakers, P.O., Mike, and David, for a wonderful presentation. Please remember to fill out a 3x5 card. If you still have questions, these gentlemen have graciously offered to respond to you via email, so put your name and email address on. Also, equally as important, if you are not already a member of the Orleans Taxpayers Association, we just happen to have forms out in the lobby that you can fill out. Also, there are handouts on the table up here if you're interested in getting a few more details. And there is I believe, the model of the less than 30-pound pump that's on the table here. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming, and please spread the word. Thank you.
My name is Glenn Skipper. I'm at the Booster House. I saw the same presentation.